So, really excited to talk about this topic today, not just because I'm a chief cyber resilience officer, but I think it's really important in order to run successful security programs, successfully secure the enterprise, to understand the difference between these topics in terms of the value that they bring to an organization, where they have gaps, how they all work together, et cetera. And I mean, Brandon mentioned that I'm a women's tackle football coach, and I tell my players all the time, football's a game of inches. And I think the major difference between good teams and championship teams is attention to detail. And in a similar fashion, attention to detail is really important when it comes to how effectively you're able to secure security programs. So let's jump into this thing. So they're not all the same thing, right? I mean, if the answer was yes, this would be a really short sort of keynote here. But we're going to talk about the differences between them, the similarities between them, and really kind of get into the weeds and split the hairs around these things, because you could argue that all three of these are part of each other, or that one overlaps another, and all those things are true. But it's really, again, really important to understand in isolation what the intended outcome is of that subject. Because something else I think we tend to do in this industry is sort of, unconsciously, I'll say, use the same word to mean different things, right? We might be talking about security when we say resilience. We might be talking about business continuity when we say resilience. But the reality is, when we dig into the details of driving these outcomes, it, again, really important to understand where they fit and the appropriate use case. So let's dig into these separately. We'll start with security. And like I'm an academic, Brandon mentioned I'm a professor of cybersecurity. So I like to start with definitions to make sure we're all on the same page. And so in preparing this presentation, I found two definitions that you're probably familiar with, because we're still having the conversation around information security as well as cybersecurity. So from an information security perspective, it's essentially protecting information and information systems in order to ensure confidentiality, integrity, and availability. When we get to the cybersecurity definition, it's kind of the same thing, right? We're ensuring the integrity, confidentiality, availability. They added in authentication, non-repudiation, but it's still preventing damage to something, protecting something. And I wanted to highlight the key words here from these definitions to really drive home the point that the focus of security, or the goal of security, or the intended purpose of security in its most natural and traditional form, right, before we start to apply it to other things, is to prevent bad things from happening, or protect the organization, or protect assets. So this is where, and it doesn't necessarily have to be technology that does it. So this is where your policies and procedures come into place, letting users know what acceptable use policies are, or what things are accepted when leveraging corporate resources. From a technology perspective, it's your firewalls, your antivirus, your intrusion detection systems, things of that nature. So this is where we focus on the good cyber hygiene, controlling the controllables, making sure that we're taking care of the things that are within our control. All right. All right. So what about resilience? So this one is near and dear to my heart. And that's because, so I've been in tech and security for almost 25 years. And I've kind of gone through this evolution of what I think is important. We're trained as practitioners in this industry that the goal is to reduce risk. We have to reduce cyber risk, or we have to mitigate cyber risk, or we can make other risk decisions. We can avoid it, we can accept it, we can transfer it. But practically speaking, when we show up to work every day and we're doing something active, what we're doing there is reducing risk. My argument is that reducing risk doesn't necessarily ensure that the business is going to continue to operate when something happens, right? So taking a step back and going back to security, right? We are protecting the business. We're trying to reduce risk. We're trying to do our best to make sure nothing happens. But we say all the time in today's world, it's no longer a matter of if we are breached or if we have an incident, it's a matter of when. And so when we get to resilience, that's when we start to think about, okay, well, what do we do if everything we did to secure the enterprise or to secure the data or to keep our users secure? What if something fails? What do we do then?